Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. Today I have my dressing gown on, I have a hot drink with some chocolate sprinkles on the top, and I am ready to give you some winter recommendations to keep you warm this winter. Last year I did a festive middle grades recommendation video if you want to check that out, because I do have loads more books on that video that I didn't want to repeat in this video, so there won't be any crossover from that one. But if you do want to check it out, it is in the description box. That one is just festive middle grade, like it has the Christmas elements to them, and it was just middle grade. In this video, I'm splitting it into younger readers and older readers because I have some middle grade recommendations, but I also have some adult recommendations that I will get to at the end. So it's not all middle grade today. Maybe next year I can do an updated list, but in the meantime, I haven't actually really read a whole lot of wintry, festive kind of books in recent memory, not since that video anyway. So I'm giving you some different ones today, and hopefully you haven't heard of them, or you maybe have, but you haven't been convinced to read it yet. So hopefully my job in this video is to get you to pick them up. Can we appreciate the mug for just a second as well? And I do make the best coffee. Okay. Let's get into the recommendations. I'll start off with the younger readers. The first one is When the Sea Turned to Silver by Grace Lynn. Grace Lynn is the author of Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, which is one of my favourite middle grade books of all time. When the Sea Turned to Silver has a lot more of a wintry feel to it. You will see imagery throughout that have a very cold and wintry vibe. So this one follows Pinmay, and her grandmother tells stories to her, to their entire village, but one day the emperor comes and kidnaps the storyteller, so Yinmei has to go after her grandmother to rescue her. She has a friend called Yashan who joins her on this adventure, but not only do we have that storyline, like Where the Mountain Meets the Moon and Story River to the Sky, which was Grace Lynn's follow-up to Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, they have these sections in the book that are told in story. So we have a tale within a tale, and it's so beautiful and so beautifully told. I absolutely adore Grace Lynn's writing, and if you have not yet read this one, but you have read Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, which is probably her most popular, it's one that I always recommend and love. This one is definitely a fantastic follow-up to it. You do not need to read any of the previous books either. This is a totally different story, but it's told in such a similar way to the previous two books that it feels like it's part of this connected world, and it's just so brilliant. But this one definitely great for the winter. One that I read earlier this year was The Last Bear by Hannah Gold. This was a really beautiful tale about a girl who ends up going to Bear Island, which is an island where all the polar bears that live there have gone away due to global warming. The bears are endangered and they're just not on the island anymore. But this girl, April, she accompanies her father who is going to Bear Island. It's just those two, them two, on this island. And she accompanies her father, and she ends up coming across a bear on Bear Island. And she befriends this bear, she looks after this bear. It's like a great look into, you know, global warming, the impact of it, what it does to the animals. And this friendship between April and the bear is really heartwarming, and it's such a touching story. Great again for the winter, and it's one that I think a lot of people will really take to, especially younger readers. I think they will really connect with April and absolutely love her journey with this bear. This one is, you know, another really good one to read, and also for adults, like, come on. One that is very similar is The Good Bear by Sarah Lean. Now try not to get these ones mixed up, but this one follows Thea, who goes to visit her father in Norway, and she ends up finding a bear in the woods. I mean, there is a recurring theme here, and there's just like this really touching element of, I guess, a friendship between a girl and a bear that I think some authors have really, you know, grown attached to. And you know what, as a reader, I do really enjoy reading these types of stories because it does show the kindness of humans towards animals, the importance of animals. So this one is another really good one in the same vein as The Last Bear. And of course it is, again, filled with beautiful wintry imagery, snow, the Norway, absolutely love Norway, the Northern Lights. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So this one and The Last Bear are very similar, but you know, once you read them you will see that there are differences, but you know what, it's not a bad thing being similar at all. Yeah, it's great, it's lovely, bears are fab. Save the bears. But the OG bear story is The Girl Who Speaks Bear by Sophie Anderson, although there isn't actually kind of anything about conservation or animal endangerment in this book. But The Girl Who Speaks Bear is one of my all-time favourite middle grade books. I read it a couple of years ago when it came out, and this one follows Jelke, Jelke, who was born in a bear cave, and she is discovered there and she's taken to a village. When she grows a little bit older, she grows bear legs and she ends up going into the snow forest, where she ends up, kind of coming across different people, different creatures, and on these loads of different adventures. It's very adventurous. It's so good, but very wintry and has all of the great wintry vibes in it. You do not have to have read The House with Chicken Legs to read this one. This also has stories within stories, so there is like Yanka telling stories a bit like Where the Mountain Meets the Moon or When the Sea Turned to Silver. It's very similar in that regard, and it's just beautifully told. And Mousetrap is one of my favorite characters in this. So if you want a really reliable author like Sophie Anderson to deliver, then you've got yourself a winner right here. So a very new one is The Christmas Carols by Mel Taylor Besant, and I just love the sprayed edges with the Christmas lights on there. Love it so much. This one follows Holly Carroll, and she and her family celebrate Christmas 365 days a year. And, they have Christmas cheer all year round, and then they end up moving house, and Holly moves to a new school, and while she's at this new school, people find her really weird for celebrating Christmas during the year, and so it kind of chips away at her, and she starts to lose her Christmas spirit. So Holly has to really kind of dig deep and find a way to reclaim her Christmas spirit in time for Christmas. This one is on my December TBR. I cannot wait to read it, and I just think it's going to be so festive and wonderful, and hopefully a Christmas classic for years to come. Another one I'm about to read in December is Wish You Was, The Tiny Guardian of Lost Letters by Alexandra Paige. This one is set in 1952 in smoggy London, and we follow Penny, and she works in her uncle's post office. She catches this, little mouse in the post office, and she follows it. She finds out that this mouse is called Wish You Was, and Wish You Was is a sorter of lost mail, a guardian of lost mail. Shows Penny the underground of London and this kind of system for letters that get lost and how to get them back to their owners or get them to the place that they need to go. And I love animal stories so much. It's almost a little bit like The Rescuers. I just think it's going to be so charming and wonderful. Yeah, I love it. It also says illustrated by Penny Neville Lee. So the fact the illustrator is also called Penny, beautiful. No Ordinary Thing by G.Z. Schmidt. This one is set in 1999 in New York City, and we follow Adam. He works at his uncle's bakery, and I'm starting to see a pattern of, young kids working in their uncle's shops. That was totally unintentional, but Adam works at his uncle's bakery, and one day a customer comes in and says he's going to make this extraordinary discovery in the attic, but Adam kind of just brushes him off. But a few days later, he does make a discovery in the attic. In this attic, he finds a snow globe, and in the snow globe, it transports him into the past. He then meets different people about 100 years before, and they each have some kind of connection to Adam. It is a whimsical, magical tale, and the snow globe, the time travel aspect of it, just sounds like such a fantastic thing. You're going to see a few different variations of this kind of story, but I have The Toy Makers Apprentice by Sherry L. Smith. This is a sort of Nutcracker retelling, and I do have a couple more Nutcracker things on the way. I've been obsessed with the Nutcracker this year, and honestly, there's a good reason for it, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But The Toy Makers Apprentice. In this one, we follow Stefan Drosselmeyer, and he is the son of a really great toy maker. I mean, if you know the surname, you will know why. But his father gets kidnapped, and Stefan gets visited by someone telling him that he has to save this princess and gives him this magical nut. There is the Mouse Queen, the seven-headed Prince of Mice, in all the wonderful things you would come to expect from the Nutcracker Ballet, the Nutcracker story, everything like that. So anything Nutcracker, related is perfect to read for winter. Next, I have Frost Hollow Hall by Emma Carroll. Now, if you know Emma Carroll at all, you will know that she writes the best historical fiction. This one is no different. It's set in 1881 at Frost Hollow Hall. This one follows Tilly, and she goes ice skating on a frozen lake that nobody is really allowed to skate on ever since the death of Kit, who, it happened years and years before, but that doesn't scare Tilly. Anyway, she skates, she goes under the ice, and she is saved by a ghost boy, and she has to help this ghost in moving on, finding out his story, what happened on the frozen lake years ago. And it's a great kind of cozy, wintry, middle grade mystery that I think a lot of people will enjoy, especially if you enjoy really great historical writing, and Emma Carroll can give that in bucket spades. Is that the right saying? Bucket spades? A pretty new one as well is The Ice Whisperers by Helenka Stakira, and also illustrated by Marco Guadalupe. Yeah, it's filled with these kind of drawing style illustrations where, it looks like they're still being drawn, which I really, really love. Like, you can still see, like, the pencil lines. So this one follows a girl called Bella who has to stay with her uncle in Siberia. And again, we have an uncle. I'm an uncle. Why aren't I this cool? I don't have a bakery. I don't have a post office. I don't live in Siberia. what do I have? Bella ends up finding the entrance to this icy land that's frozen in time, and there she ends up finding a long-lost sister from 40,000 years ago. She has to kind of try and save this land and go on this adventure with her long-lost sister, and it's bound to give you some very adventure-y, icy feels. Next, I have The Very Merry Murder Club, which is a short story anthology filled with festive middle-grade mysteries, and this one was edited by Serena Patel and Robin Stevens. There are some of my favourite authors in this. We have Benjamin Dean, Elle McNichol, Dominique Valente, and so many more. So you're bound to at least find one short story in here that you will really fall in love with. There's nothing better than kind of cozying up and reading a middle grade mystery, especially when they're this short, you know, very quick and snappy and to the point, and you get to enjoy that. So 13 winter mysteries in one book. What more do you need? And again, shout out to whoever the illustrator is of this, because the under the dust jacket, I keep showing this off in everything I do. Illustrated by Harrie Woodgate. So Harrie Woodgate, incredible job. Finally, for the younger readers, middle grade section, there is a book that hasn't been released just yet, but it's A Storm of Sisters by Michelle Harrison. This is the 4th book in the Pinch of Magic series. Honestly, I am so excited for this one. It comes out in February, which is, I know, not ideal, but February is still technically winter, so... But I am so excited to read this one because I love the Pinch of Magic series. I love following the Widdershins sisters, and you can technically read any of the sequels without having read any of the ones before it. It will kind of not have the same impact because we're following the same characters. We have so much character development throughout, but each story has been like an isolated incident and it's not been a recurring storyline throughout. So technically you can read A Storm of Sisters if you're fancying just a really wholesome, whimsical, wintry read featuring the Widdershins sisters, and they are sisters who have these magical objects and they have adventures together. It's just so good, and every single book has been so different to the last one, so genuinely I think you could still read this one without reading the ones prior to it. However, I would recommend starting with A Pinch of Magic, then A Sprinkle of Sorcery, then A Tangle of Spells, and then A Storm of Sisters. Yeah, I just wanted to shout that one out because I love Michelle Harrison with everything I have, and I just think it'll be great to pre-order it and show it some love, so I'm excited for it. I hope you are too. So getting into the books for older readers then. I don't think anyone's surprised at this point when I show Midnight Neverwood by Emma Kushner in a video these days. I did a reading vlog on this and the original stories that inspired this book, because this is a Nutcracker retelling, but I will link that reading vlog down below. I talk so much more about my thoughts and feelings of this book and the influences that kind of shaped this book to what it is. But this one follows Marietta, and she is a ballet dancer. She loves ballet. She has to kind of take her place in society after the new year, which means she will have to give up her ballet dancing life. But then we have a mysterious stranger move in next door called Drosselmeyer, and he builds this elaborate set for her swan song, but she ends up falling through a portal in one of the set pieces of this stage thing that he's created for her, and she ends up in Everwood. And Everwood is this magical place that's like based on the Nutcracker. You know, there's so much confectionery writing, so many sensory descriptions and whimsical magic in Everwood. And it's just still so whimsical, even for an adult book, and I think it's perfect for like fans of like, I don't know, like Night Circus, but this one has a plot, so it's fine. And it's just really interesting, and I love the fact that it's Nutcracker inspired. Even though it honors the Nutcracker story, you don't actually have to have read the Nutcracker to kind of read this one or to even enjoy it. Like, you can still read this and enjoy it without being a fan of the Nutcracker. So definitely give this a read. I think it's incredible. Yes, and yeah, sprayed edges. Speaking of the Nutcracker and Other Christmas Tales is a fantastic read. I also spent a couple of days earlier in the year, I think it was just after New Year, where I sat down and read the original 2 Nutcracker stories. So this actually has the version by Alexander Dumas, and he is kind of retelling his version of the Nutcracker from A.T.A. Hoffman, and I kind of I maybe prefer the original one, but that was because I read them back to back. But this one is more detailed. The one by Alexander Dumas is a lot more detailed and had a lot more kind of plot and motion to it. So I think more people would enjoy the Alexander Dumas version. It's definitely a great recommendation, I think, because it really made me feel so festive inside, and I had never really read the Nutcracker before. I didn't really understand the story. I never saw the ballet. The closest I came to the Nutcracker, I think, was a Mickey Mouse kind of Disney short or something, and this was just, it was a really nice tale. It's just toys come to life. It has the Christmas elements. It has a far off land, a little bit of scariness every now and then, but it's just fantastic. It's great. I love it, and definitely as well better than the Nutcracker and the Four Realms film that came out a couple of years ago. I cannot go ahead without telling telling you my favourite fairy tale of all time, which is the Snow Queen. I love the Snow Queen so much. This is a gorgeous edition which has other winter tales. So another few that I would recommend are like The King of the Swans, which is a traditional German tale, The Christmas Spruce Tree, which is a traditional Swedish tale, Tilly's Christmas by Louisa May Alcott, who is the author of Little Women, Under the Willow Tree by Hans Christian Andersen, who also wrote The Snow Queen, A Christmas Miracle by Harrison S. Morris, and The Little Match Girl, also by Hans Christian Andersen. But that one is also kind of like soul destroying as well, so bear that in mind. But there are so many more kind of Christmas, festive, wintry tales in this book. So if you can, maybe try and find a copy of this one, because it is filled with so many great ones. Those were just some of my recommendations from this. But The Snow Queen is genuinely one of my favourites. So definitely want to see if I can read it over Christmas, reread it maybe on Christmas Eve. I don't know. I love this story. I love the icy setting of it. I love the Snow Queen as a character, the plot, the adventure. It's just fantastic. So Snow Queen, Hans Christian Andersen, check it out. If you fancy another anthology to read during like very wintry nights where it's kind of cold and you want to curl up under the blanket with a nice hot drink, then the Haunting Season, Ghostly Tales for Long Winter Nights is also a really good one. There are some great stories in this one, especially the one by Karen Millwood Hargrave, who is literally solely the only reason I bought this book, not gonna lie. But you also have authors like Elizabeth McNeil, Jess Kidd, Natasha Pulley, Laura Purcell, Andrew Michael Hurley, and Imogen Hims Bauer also contribute stories to this collection. So yeah, I think ghost stories during Christmas time are kind of a given now. I think maybe A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens kind of inspired that kind of wintry tradition. But yeah, it's perfect if you want some spooky with your snowy. And again, sprayed edges. I'll show you the sprayed edges of this one first, just so we can get it out of the way. But The Winter Garden by Alexandra Bell. I am going to be reading this in December with my patrons as well for my YA and adult book group. Alexandra Bell is the author of the Polar Bear Explorers Club, which is a fantastic wintry middle grade series as well, which I haven't mentioned in this video, but it is one I would recommend. But I only haven't mentioned it because I recommend it all the time anyway. This one follows 8-year-old Beatrice, and on the day that her mother dies, she ends up getting an invitation to the Winter Garden. She stays there for 7 days, but then the garden disappears and nobody believes Beatrice's story. And then 18 years later, Beatrice is marrying a man who she doesn't really love, but her late father approved of him, so she is kind of marrying him to please her late father. But then she ends up saying, you know what, screw it, screw Victorian society, I'm gonna leave my fiance and find this garden. Then she and her best friend Rosa end up getting this kind of invitation to a competition where they have to create the best pleasure garden or something like that. And the winner of this competition gets to have one wish. Anything they wish will come true. So now Beatrice is having to compete in order to get this wish so that she can find this garden again. One that is so different to pretty much everything I mentioned is It Won't Be Christmas Without You by Beth Rickles. I read this a couple of years ago and I really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. This one follows Eloise and Cara. They're two sisters who used to be so close, but now they're not really anymore. Eloise is Christmas obsessed and she also has a Grinch-like neighbour who she really fancies. And Cara, she is very work driven, she doesn't really give her family the time of day, and her perfect boyfriend is hiding something from her. So both of these sisters go on incredible journeys and their kind of storylines, you know, meet up, and there's just like some heartwarming and touching moments in this. There is that kind of budding romance between Eloise and her Grinch-like neighbour, and it's so good, it's so festive, and it's quite short. It's a bit of a shorter adult, I would say like older YA adult Christmassy read, and if you want something a little bit like mindless fun, this is perfect for you. Definitely read a bit like a Hallmark Christmas movie, and I really love Hallmark Christmas movies, so there we go. I mean, I'm wearing a Hallmark Christmas movies shirt, so. And then finally, I cannot end this recommendations video without mentioning A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I mean, I feel like it's one that a lot of people feel compelled to at least read once in their life, and that was me a couple of years ago. I felt compelled to read it for the first time, so that's what I did, and I do not regret it at all. I loved this book. It was so charming, and I loved how Charles Dickens wrote this, and I do love Victorian literature, but sometimes they just do not connect with me whatsoever. But this one is a totally different story. I don't think I need to tell you the story of Scrooge and A Christmas Carol. It lives up to it. It lives up to its legacy, and it's one that I think a lot of people will still enjoy to this day. It definitely stands the test of time. It's just beautiful. It's like really, really beautiful, and yeah, it's just everything you picture Christmas to be. It's great. So there we have it. Those were my winter book recommendations. I'm hoping to read a lot more in 2022 so I can give you some brand new and fresh recommendations, but I hope maybe I surprised you with some new ones in this video, and hopefully I will end up loving the ones that I have not yet read, but I wanted to shout out because they're on my immediate TBR and they look so good, and I think you guys would enjoy them too. So thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment, let me know your winter book recommendations because maybe I haven't read it and maybe I should. And I will hopefully see you in the next video. Bye.